Hello and welcome to your next Menopause Morning. Today is a very important subject for you because I see this with women suffering with menopause symptoms all the time, and it's often referred to as the menopause brain. So, if you're dealing with this, you probably know what I'm talking about, where maybe you don't have the same ability to remember, you don't have the same ability to comprehend. Maybe it's harder to regulate your moods, but really anything going on to tied into directly your brain and your cognitive health and your mood are often referred to as the menopause brain. Now, what's interesting with this is that I did a survey a couple of years ago, and it was a one question survey that only went to women who were between the ages of 45 and 55. And that one question was, what is it that you fear most about aging? And it was interesting because I thought I was going to get a wide array of different responses, things like retire too early, retire too late, didn't save enough money, being an empty nester, what's it going to be like with myself and my significant other without kids and family. It just all these different things I thought I was going to hear, and I couldn't have been more wrong because by far over 95% of the responses to that question were words like dementia, Alzheimer's, basically anything tied into neurodegeneration. And I get it. I understand that firsthand because I have a significant risk factor of neurodegeneration in my family. I come from a family who my grandmother, she died with severe dementia when I was very young. My mother was diagnosed with dementia. My mother spent the last 13 months of her life living in a hospital bed with my father, feeding her baby food and changing her diapers every day, and she died with dementia. And my older brother in his mid 60s died with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a different neurodegenerative condition. So I get this firsthand. And when we tie this into menopause, though, it's it's almost not fair for you because you're often just told that you have menopause brain because you don't produce enough estradiol and you need to have estradiol to keep your brain functioning on an optimal basis. And man, that is just so it's almost narrow-minded because it's not looking at the big picture at all. And if you've listened to the Menopause Morning enough, you can recall that I'm always talking about how that your body has the ability to maintain perfect hormone balance when you go from childbearing years into perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopausal. If your brain, your hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals are all working correctly, you don't have a problem with this at all. But what I want you to understand, it's not just about estradiol. And granted, there could be some estrogen deficiencies that can lead to some less than optimal function with your brain and your cognitive health. And yeah, heck, even if you just listen to my Menopause Morning, just believe it was last week, you'll recognize that the ability to maintain your estrogen postmenopausally is tied into your adrenals and your liver. And so that's just one small piece of the puzzle that could be leading to what you referred to as menopause brain. And I want to make the connection as to how this all works together. Again, if you've been listening to the Menopause Morning long enough, you recognize that there's different triggers that leave you in a position where your adrenals aren't working properly, where your liver isn't working properly, so you can't maintain optimal estrogen production. But those triggers are most notably tied into infections in your gut, food sensitivities, toxicities in your body, as well as poor fundamentals of health. And when you think about that, as far as brain and cognitive health, heck, if you have a gut infection, your gut and your brain is one system. We know this because about 90% of your brain output goes right down the vagus nerve through the spinal column into the nervous system tissue, and the gut comes right back up. So if you have a gut issue, you have a brain issue. If you have a brain issue, you have a gut issue, and you can never separate those. So if you have a trigger of gut infections that's leading to your hormonal system being imbalanced because of how it's affecting your adrenals, well, guess what? That gut infection is also leading to brain and cognitive issues. Now, on top of that, if you have infections in your gut, which is highly likely if you're dealing with menopause symptoms, you're most likely dealing with food sensitivities that very often you're just not aware of. Simple fact is 86%, you can get that, 86% of the people who have food sensitivity are asymptomatic. So it's not like you eat the food and you feel like crap right afterwards, right? So, but you could eat the food and it still could be driving an inflammatory response in your gut, which then, as I just mentioned, is if you have an inflammatory response in your gut, that's going to affect your brain as well. So very often you could be eating something that you don't have an awareness is driving this sensitivity slash inflammatory response, which is having a significant impact on the function of your brain. So that's another big component. Now, on top of that, if we just talk about toxicity, this is another huge problem, and it's and on a level where, just to be really clear, we're all toxic, including myself. I say that very confidently because I remember some research I read. Oh heck, this is probably 12, 15 years ago. It was done by a university on the East Coast, and they took breast milk from women who live in the wilderness areas of Alaska. So nowhere near any big city or any manufacturing, no nothing. And those women still had PCBs and chemicals in their breast milk. So if that's going on in a woman in the wilderness area of Alaska, like somebody like me who lives 40 miles from LAX, what's in my body, right? And you have to ask yourself what's in your body. So the opportunity or the chance that you're actually have some level of toxic response in your body is actually quite high. Well, a lot of the toxins that you would have potentially in your body are also known as neurotoxins, which means that they can negatively impact your brain function. And I get that, because even in my own health history, I used to have grand mal seizures back in my late teens into mid 20s, and it was because I had a high amount of mercury in my system, and mercury is a known neurotoxin. So for me, it triggered seizures. Heck, I was even having seizures on anticonvulsant medications. So what I want you to really understand about this is when somebody says, "Oh, you just have menopause brain," and almost to the level, and I've heard women say this, and please say it differently to yourself. Because when somebody says, "Oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I just have menopause brain. This is just a part of my transition of life." That's not true at all. And if you still believe that to be true, please go back and watch all the episodes of the Menopause Morning, because you see that's really not true. But it's literally it's if you have what you refer to as menopause brain, it's a temporary situation until you uncover the triggers of it. Now, granted, it could be triggered by your estrogens being off, but guess what? If your estrogens are off, that means that you've got to get your adrenals into balance and your liver into balance, because that's what's going to maintain proper estrogen levels in menopause and postmenopausal years. And then on top of that, what I always want you to recognize is that if you have a problem with your adrenals, remember your adrenals, which is a part of your hormonal system as a whole is a reactive system. The problem is almost never what's going on with your hormones. The problem is whatever's causing the reaction of your hormones. And very often that is, as I mentioned already, gut infections, food sensitivities, toxicity, poor fundamentals of health. These are the things that you've got to get to the bottom of to really escape that menopause brain. And I can tell you firsthand. I mean, I've had so many clients through the years. I mean, I've been working with women with hormones and menopause for over 21 and a half years at this point. And it's just amazing the levels at which you can recognize that you could change the symptoms you're dealing with. And the main symptom I'm talking about today is menopause brain. And I'll tell you, even on top of that, let's even say that you're like I am, where you have a high risk factor based on your family history of neurodegeneration. There's still so many things you could do to keep your brain happy and healthy. I have a whole regimen that I've been using now for about the last 10 years. I take literally 7 different supplements every day to keep this happy and healthy. And I can tell you at almost 62, my brain and my memory, my cognitive function is better than it was probably in my late 30s. So even if you think you've got a problem, I want you to understand that you have an ability to really kind of address that problem from a natural perspective, address the triggers, address overall what's going on with your hormonal system. You can uncover the possible challenges with your gut, food sensitivities, toxicity, and have a happy and a healthy brain. Yeah. So, with that said, I just wanted to get this message out to you today to really help you understand if you do have menopause brain, it is not just an estradiol issue. And it goes much potentially much deeper than this, but it's all what to me what's exciting about it is it's all balanceable. You can understand what's going on, you can address it, you can take the right supplements, make the right lifestyle changes to turn this all around, and to really to, as you hear me say all the time, to turn back the clock and feel young again. Yeah, so please, with this video today, if you have any questions, no matter whether you're watching this on YouTube or other avenues of social media, if you have any questions about what I'm talking about today, please put that question or comment below, and I will answer that for you personally. And as always, the Menopause Morning, you'll see this at 8 a.m. every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, and this is something that it's typically live. And again, if you're not watching this live and you're watching the replay, you still have the ability to ask questions and make comments. So have a great day and enjoy the thought that with your brain you can turn back the clock and feel young again. Have a great day.